I welcome the Pennsylvania Newsmakers, and thanks for watching. Well, stay with us for our special interview with the state's top fiscal watchdog, and then our popular legislative update, all following these words.
This is Pennsylvania Newsmakers, a fast-paced, unrehearsed weekly discussion with and about the leaders who shape your world. And now, here's your host, Terry Madonna.
Hi, welcome back. Well, we've had a lot of audits by the state's top fiscal watchdog. He's in our studio this afternoon or this morning, wherever we are. Jack Wagner is with us. He's a former state senator. Welcome, General Wagner.
Thank you, Terry. Nice to be here.
Now, look, I know you're going to tell me don't ask the question, and you know what I'm going to say right now. You are prominently mentioned as one of the leading candidates to be governor. Now, Edward Dell is still in his first year, yet we're talking about this. But as you know, I mean, you get named, you're on everybody's short list, or at least thinking about it. I know you got to get reelected to the current job.
Well, anytime I hear that, I'm honored that people think of me about that office, but I'm entirely focused on my reelection to Auditor General in 2008.
Well, but you're on every, I mean, the stories are already appearing, you're on them, and we'll see what happens. You're always welcome on this show when you want to come. If you do decide someday, you'll come on and we'll chat about it.
One election at a time.
I understand. But you know how to ask that question.
No, I know you did. And I expected it.
And you expected it. Okay. Well, good. At any rate, let's talk a little bit about, look, first of all, your job, and we've had on a succession of, or your predecessors, General Casey was on a good bit. Thanks for coming on. Your job, you're the fiscal watchdog. Do I got that right?
Yeah, absolutely. The independent fiscal watchdog. Independently elected by the people of Pennsylvania. A seat that's been independently elected since 1850, the second longest after the governor.
Yeah. All right, well, let's talk about some of the audits. Look, we have to start with PHEAA, the Pennsylvania Higher Education Assistance Agency. It's been in the news a lot. You know, its former CEO, Dick Willey, by the way, he was on this program on a couple of occasions. We wanted to give him a chance to tell his story. They've had, not arguably, some excesses that had to do with bonuses and travel. You did an audit a couple of months ago. What are the highlights of that audit? What is it that the citizens of the state ought to know about that audit?
Well, PHEAA in many ways has lost its focus, and the culture at PHEAA has been one of excess recently, and that's part of what we revealed as part of an interim report. That's part of an ongoing audit. I mean, we continue to audit PHEAA, and we put out an interim report approximately a month ago. What that interim report said was basically the bonuses at PHEAA are outrageous. It was reported publicly that 5 or maybe 23 of the top executives received bonuses. Well over 300 people were receiving bonuses. In a 3-year period, $7.5 million was spent on bonuses alone. And those dollars, Terry, could have easily gone towards grants for Pennsylvania students to help them in their higher education.
Yeah. Well, one of the, when the CEO, Dick Willey, was on the program, we were talking about that, and he made the argument that the board does the bonuses. The board of 20 people consists of 16 legislators. There have been people who've talked about maybe changing the nature of that board. And they are, I think, contemplating some change. It's like every time they get caught doing something perhaps that they shouldn't do, policy-wise, not legally at any rate, they say, well, maybe we shouldn't do it and we'll change the policy. But it's still the board of 20 people who are essentially doing this. I mean, who is it that should change the policies? The executives who run it, or the board, or both?
Well, it's a combination of both.
Yeah.
And top management is really in control on a daily basis. And what we revealed as it relates to the bonuses, for instance, there are benchmarks of performance that were put in place by top management for top management. Did they have to be approved by the board? Yes, they had to be approved by the board, but they were excessive. And so there's a lot of responsibility here with top management and also the board.
Yeah.
There are 2 bills in the General Assembly to change the makeup of the board.
Right.
I think those bills will receive serious consideration by the General Assembly and should.
Yeah, Representative Josh Shapiro from Montgomery County, I guess, has been pretty active on that, as well as some other lawmakers.
And Barbara McIlvaine Smith from the Southeast.
Right.
Yes.
All right, well, let's go to another aspect of that while we're on it. I mean, there are complaints about sort of going to some of what I'll call the finer resorts in the state, like one is Nemacolin and Woodlands out in the western part of the state. Now, most public entities, I mean, there's nothing wrong with doing conferences, but, you know, they've gone to a fairly exclusive resort. Now, their argument is that in the PHEAA argument is that in a private sector, you know, when they're trying to entice clients who will make them millions and millions of dollars if they spend a couple $100,000, why is that not beneficial? What's your answer to that?
That hasn't been proven as being the core reason why PHEAA does business.
Okay, that's a good answer.
I mean, we haven't audited that specifically, but they're located here in Harrisburg. There's nothing wrong with having your client come here and take them out to dinner. It doesn't need to be Greenbrier. It doesn't need to be extravagant places far away from Pennsylvania, or even Nemacolin Woodlands. I mean, they have spent almost $1 million on these frivolous trips and outings for primarily top management. Yep. The majority of people attending those have been top management. Some board members at times, but they have not proven to us or to the public that those trips are justified. All
right, we're chatting with the Auditor General of the state of Pennsylvania, Jack Wagner. We're going to talk a little bit about a very, very important program that supplies fuel oil to the poor. Is that right? And what he found in an audit of that operation. We'll be back in a moment.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by the Pennsylvania Chamber of Business and Industry, the statewide voice of business. This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by Pennsylvania Medical Society. Doctors and patients, preserve the relationship. And by the Pennsylvania Manufacturers Association. Business in Pennsylvania is our business.
Hi, welcome back to Pennsylvania Newsmakers with my special interview with the Auditor General of the state of Pennsylvania, Jack Wagner. He's the fiscal watchdog. I like that, fiscal watchdog. Somebody has to keep us all straight, and this is the guy who does it. All right, the LIHEAP program, as you know, is a very, very important program, a grant program, you know, that provides assistance to folks who, you know, below the poverty line for energy. For their energy use and needs. And here we are. We're into the winter months. Talk a little bit about what you found in your audit of that grant program.
LIHEAP is the Low Income Home Energy Assistance Program. It's a federally funded program. Pennsylvania receives approximately $160 million a year for the last 20-plus years. Only one out of the 20 years has the General Assembly added some monies, Pennsylvania state taxpayer dollars, to the LIHEAP program. It's a very important program, as you indicated, Terry, to help people in need, to make sure their heat is not turned off in the winter months and they don't die, basically. So we want to see LIHEAP work and work well and serve more Pennsylvanians. What our audit revealed was that we found potential fraud in the program. We found Social Security numbers that were not valid. We found people, the same person applying with multiple Social Security numbers. So as part of our audit, we recommended strong measures of better management and better oversight of the program. We also turned over in excess of 1,000 files to the Office of the Inspector General to further investigate. So we want to see the LIHEAP program work and work well. We think it has some problems, though, right now, which we hope the Department of Public Welfare is correcting.
Now, do these need, does the solution lie with the Department of Public Welfare, or does it lie with the legislature, or both? Are there things that the legislature should do? Is this all under sort of the rubric of the federal guidelines?
This program is controlled 100% from the Department of Public Welfare. The General Assembly has really... There's very little the General Assembly could do here. Maybe it could mandate a better oversight through legislation, but it's really an administrative function. And one of the other concerns for us is that if we don't get our act together on all aspects of LIHEAP, again, this is a federally funded program, they could withhold certain amounts of dollars, portions of dollars from us, so that less Pennsylvanians would get the assistance that they need.
And what has the response been?
Well, it wasn't what I hoped it would be, quite frankly. I mean, many audits have been totally embraced by the department.
Yeah.
We did an audit of the Opportunity Grant Program, DCED. They totally embraced our recommendations. I wasn't
overwhelmed. You were underwhelmed
by the response. Now, the one thing that we have incorporated with this special performance audit is we're going back next year. Prior to the program in the winter season of 2008. And we're going to see what changes have been made. And if the appropriate changes have not been made, we're going to hit them hard.
Before you go, I want to go back. We were talking about the PHEAA thing, the PHEAA program, and you wanted to make another point. We talked about this during the break. Go ahead and make that point.
Well, we were outraged with some of the information that we found as part of our audit. And I talked about the bonuses. But in $7.5 million in the last 3 years in bonuses, we found that the top 23 people within PHEAA receive very large bonuses. But what outraged us the most was those bonuses were built into their pensions. And with those bonuses built into their pensions, if you served in state government long enough, your pension when you leave could actually be, and is for certain people, larger than their salary.
I knew you were going to say that. Somehow I just knew you were going to say that.
And that outraged us because we don't think, number one, I don't believe in bonuses in state government, period. I think someone should be paid a sufficient salary. There should not be bonuses. But when they're not transparent and when they're built into their pensions, there's something drastically wrong.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, to get a pension larger than what you earn regularly when you're a public employee, I mean, even a lot of most private sector pensions do not, you know, that wouldn't be possible even in most 401k or private sector pension plans.
You're right, and PHEAA's position has been we're not a public agency. Well, they are a public agency, and let me tell you one reason why they are. They get $450 million from the General Assembly for grants, plus the fact that everyone within PHEAA is part of the state employee retirement system, a public retirement system with oversight by the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania.
Well, we're out of time. I did want to get into this business. We'll have you back, and we can talk a little bit more about the audits of the public schools that you did, the safety and security. I mean, schools and school safety has become a hugely important topic, and something that maybe you'll come back.
We're putting much more focus on it in all of our audits.
All right. Well, when you do something else, make sure you give us a holler, and we'll have you back on. Plus, also, I know, run for re-election next year, and then we'll see what happens. You know my old question. We'll get you on here when you're a candidate for governor. All right. There you have it, the Auditor General of the state journalist update. We're going to find out what's going on from where we're sitting over that way on the hill, on Capitol Hill, following these words.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is brought to you by Pennsylvania Credit Union Association. Pennsylvania Credit Unions, where people are worth more than money. To find a credit union that is right for you, check out ibelong.org. And by the Energy Association of Pennsylvania, Pennsylvania's energy information source. This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by the State System of Higher Education. 14 state-owned universities. The state system is the largest provider of higher education in Pennsylvania. And by the Hospital and Health System Association of Pennsylvania, working towards a healthy Pennsylvania.
Hi, welcome back to the program for our usual journalist update. We're going to check in and find out what's going on in the state capitol. Joining me, as often is the case, is Brad Bumsted from the Pittsburgh Tribune Review and Robert Swift from Times-Shamrock newspapers. All right, Brad, let's start with me. We've had Bonus Gate, where we've got the Attorney General of the state calls a grand jury investigating whether bonuses given to staff members were, appropriately given, whether they're legal or not, looking at ghost employees. That's led to, a whole series of reactions within the legislature itself. We now find out, and I'll let you tell this, that there were polls done, private surveys done for the legislature. Take it from there.
Well, yes, these polls have been done for a long time, all part of the incumbency protection that the caucus has afforded their members. All of this is, resulting in some change, I think, at the Capitol. And probably the biggest thing we're likely to see potentially, are some changes on the political landscape as a result of this. The control of the House, which is narrow right now in favor of the Democrats, could be affected by this next year if Corbett's investigation takes off and a number of Democrats are indicted or convicted. Others say Corbett can't really succeed at this unless he also takes down Republicans. So you have that potential. You have the 2010 governor's race where Corbett is a candidate, presumably, for governor. And could this affect how well he does in that if he gets elected next year as Attorney General? Yeah.
Now, Robert, so our viewers understand. I mean, in the old days, parties used to run elections out of the counties. They would find the candidates, they would fund them. Now, candidates for the state legislature essentially are.
Our machines today have been the last 20, 30 years have been the legislative caucuses.
Right.
And they pick the candidates who can, especially in the Senate, this has been true, who can win in the seats. They also are players in picking statewide candidates, governors. They raise the money. What's happening is that now the props of that machine are being exposed with BonusGate. The people who did the op-ed research are the ones who got the bonuses. Right. So the spotlight's on them. What will they do next year? Right. The Philadelphia Inquirer had a story about polling done by the caucuses, political polling, which some have now vowed to stop. That's another part of these machines that have run, which are now it's being eroded. So if you're a challenger, it's still probably a good year to run next year.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, all of these things that RB is talking about here in terms of the polling and the incumbency protection, staffers doing opposition research, all took place like black ops, is the best way I can think of it over the years. The public had no clue that most of this was going on. Occasionally we would get the records and write about some of these stories, an isolated instance here, isolated there, but now the picture is coming together about how they've run all of this, and it could be in jeopardy. We've seen various things scaled back. Something as simple as the House Democratic Caucus, for instance, ending the catered luncheons that were provided to members day they're in session. What's that have to do with an election? Not much, but it's something that leadership was able to do for members that they're no longer able to do.
We don't need to get into the open records debate, but at heart is we just don't know an awful lot. I mean, you folks in particular, the journalists who are out there trying to provide information to us, the citizens, you don't actually know a lot about the spending that goes on in the bowels of the state legislature, do you?
No, there's still those leadership accounts, and even in some of those open records bill, there's a vague reference to financial records being open, but for years, these leadership accounts have had millions of dollars in them controlled by the leaders, and a lot of that spending is still largely unknown, is still largely unclear how much is in there. And that's another, and it's unclear whether that will even become public if there was a new open records law.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, what we've seen, Terry, is the tip of the iceberg in terms of the legislative spending by leadership accounts and all that. And I've always wondered whether there are other accounts that we just don't even see, don't know what to ask for.
And what's your, we're going to run to a break, and then I want to talk about America's Most Wanted. I'll explain that to you in a moment. But the change, I mean, how much change do you think we're going to see here in the next couple of weeks? Because then they'll go out, go home for the holiday break and won't be back until the end of January.
Change in terms of legislation?
Yeah.
Or?
Well, just to change this cultural stuff that you're talking about, I mean,
it's going to be gradual, and I don't think we're going to see it over the next couple of weeks necessarily. It's going to depend what Corbett does and how extensive his investigation is. If we see people falling by the wayside on a daily, weekly or monthly basis in terms of being indicted, you're going to see more reform at this place than you've ever seen.
All right, the posters are up in the state legislature. It's like America's Most Wanted. What's that all about? You got to stick around and hear this one. You won't believe this. Back in a moment.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by HIGHMARK Blue Shield, changing the way health plans work for business with a variety of plan options for employers and more choices for employees. Information is available at highmark.com. Have a greater hand in your company's health. And by the Pennsylvania Healthcare Association, the future of long-term care. This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by PennFUTURE, where we believe that every environmental victory grows the economy, and by the Pennsylvania Cyber Charter School, bringing educational innovation and freedom to the children of Pennsylvania.
Hi, welcome back to the program. Well, this comes under the heading of You Won't Believe It. You know, everybody knows John Walsh is America's Most Wanted. It seems like we've got a crime watch going on in the state capitol, in the Capitol building itself. Brad, am I right about that?
You're absolutely right, Terry. This began earlier this week when Gene Stilp, a political activist and legislative reformer, held a news conference to say that he and a colleague were establishing a crime watch program which would be the first in the nation inside a state capitol. The reason for this, of course, is that over the past decade there have been 10 state legislators accused or convicted of various and assorted crimes, and Stilp is calling on legislative staffers to report suspicious political activity that might be related to Bonusgate, but report to him. And you know, while this was really funny, a number of people I talked to, including yourself, questioned the validity of, you know, reformers having a group like this, because it's not a real crime watch group like exists in neighborhoods.
Yeah, I mean, look, you've spent a good many years in the Capitol. I mean, does that even, I mean, on what level do you think that this makes sense?
Well, it reminds you of the old tip lines that you know, Treasurer and Auditor General used to have.
Yeah,
I remember
that's
when
true.
They were, that's you know, called with a tip. Now, where it is. In the Bonusgate investigation, the Attorney General's office got a very time-sensitive tip about documents in one of the House Democratic offices that were going to be destroyed, and they flew up to get a judge's warrant.
Wait a minute,
so,
but why wouldn't you call the Attorney General's office? I mean, why would you call, I mean, are they going to, like, as I said, they're going to set up this, I mean, John Walsh and America's Most Wanted, when they find out something, they go to the appropriate, I mean, I watch that program occasionally, they go to the appropriate legal authority. Why don't...
Well, I think this is just more of a sort of, Gene maybe is trying to, you know, put the chill in some of the people who may be doing this activity, wondering who may rat them out.
Well, that's true.
And
I mean,
maybe more of a psychological...
I mean, that may have some effect there, yeah.
That's what he said. He said this was to try to chill the political activity. And if it makes one person stop, you know, doing some campaign work on state time, I guess that's a good thing.
All right, well, listen, we got to run, but you guys are going to stay on this one, I'm sure, and see if these tips work, and you'll come back and report. All right, thanks for watching Pennsylvania Newsmakers, and as always, stay well.